My friends, the acrid smell of burning aviation kerosene mixed with the smoke of pulverized concrete has taken over the facilities of Kuwait International Airport. The Gulf's security framework has just been violently shattered. On June 3rd, 2026, the world did not wake up to a diplomatic dispute over seats or bureaucratic notes issued by men in suits in New York. The fact is that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard crossed the last red line of international decency by firing heavy missiles directly at a crowded civilian passenger terminal where staff were checking boarding passes and families were waiting for commercial flights. There were no tanks on the runway, no anti-aircraft batteries, and not a single military drone operating in that area. The practical result of this tactical insanity was a trail of structural destruction. A civilian dead and 63 people seriously injured among the wreckage of glass and metal. Tehran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs came out in public with the boldest face on the planet to declare to the Kuwaiti government that they have direct and clear responsibility for the bombing for harboring American forces on their territory. Let's translate the diplomatic gaslighting of the Revolutionary Guard into Portuguese, of course. Iran bombed an airport full of innocent passengers and then blamed the bombed country for being bombed. Look at the paradox. At the end of the fuse, Iran acts exactly like that toxic and problematic ex-partner who breaks all the dishes in the house when they realize they've lost complete control of the situation. This barbaric aggression against innocents was not a show of strength. It was a public confession of complete psychological and military collapse that happened in the previous 24 hours. General Hassan Salami sat at his targeting table, overwhelmed by the frustration of a shameful failure. And the night before, Iran launched a massive wave of ballistic missiles and swarms of drones against 2 United States military headquarters in the region. Do you know how many targets they hit? 0. Yes, my friends, none. They missed absolutely everything. Faced with the technical humiliation of seeing their arsenal turned into harmless fireworks by Western defenses, the generals in Tehran decided to take out their tactical insecurities by attacking civilians to create a false illusion of victory on state propaganda networks. Certain Soviet nostalgic commanders in Brazil went into ecstasy. They claim with 100% certainty that Iran is winning this war. But pay attention to what I'm going to tell you now, because the anatomy of the machine tells what's really happening. And all of this happened because on June 2nd, the American Central Command Forces, CENTCOM, carried out a devastating surgical response against Kesha Island, which is strategically located at the mouth of the Strait of Hormuz. The general public who watches television has no idea about the engineering of destruction that was set in motion to pulverize the drone control stations and the regime's communication towers. The operation was a perfectly orchestrated symphony that involved an attack package composed of F-15E Strike Eagle fighters from the Air Force and F-18 Super Hornet fighters from the Navy. Look at the level of technical capability of these machines. Both are 2-seat platforms. In the rear seat of the F-15E Strike Eagle sits the WSO, the Weapons Systems Officer, while in the rear seat of the F-18F is the RO, the Radar Intercept Officer. These men are not there to fly. They control the weapons and operate the Sniper Target Pod, a high-definition optical device capable of reading the license plate of a suspicious vehicle from miles away, in the middle of the darkness. And the practical result of this cutting-edge technology is transformative. The fighter jet acts as a silent predator, hunting a completely blind target on the ground. To destroy Iran's fortified facilities, the F-15E used 5,000-pound bunker-buster bombs as well as heavy 1-ton warheads and the GBU-54 precision system. The GBU-54 is a jewel of military engineering, combining navigation by fixed GPS coordinates with an active laser seeker. If the drone control facilities are buried underground, the bomb acts like a traditional JDAM, autonomously diving toward the pre-planned geographic coordinates. But if the rear operator turns on the aircraft's laser beam, the GBU-54 changes its trajectory mid-air to chase and destroy moving targets. The trucks that were carrying the Iranian missiles and the utility vehicles that tried to escape after the first impact. Targets that pilots technically call scooters were promptly hit by the laser-guided warheads from the fighter jets, blocking any attempt to escape. Kesh Island functions geographically as a true underground anthill of the Revolutionary Guard, filled with networks of tunnels that connect the quadrants of the island. And it's full of radio towers that act as the eyes and ears of Iran for maritime interdiction. The American attack gouged out the regime's eyes, and losing your eyes hurts. That same night, the Revolutionary Guard tried to respond by firing ballistic missiles at American bases and posting online that they had hit the headquarters of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. CENTCOM used just one word on its official account on social network X to dismantle Tehran's bluff: false. 2 Iranian missiles fired at Kuwait failed on their own, breaking apart in mid-flight due to chronic metallurgical manufacturing defects. While 3 missiles aimed at Bahrain collided with an impenetrable wall of layered air defense. The first layer is made up of the SM-3 missile launched from warships, which intercepts the ballistic threat directly in space, and all of this happens during the boost phase. The intermediate layer is defended by the American Army's Patriot PAC-3 system deployed in confidential locations throughout the Middle East. And if anything manages to get through, the outer terminal layer activates the THAAD interceptor, which works as a kinetic system without any explosive warhead. It destroys the enemy missile purely by energy through the direct impact of mass against hypersonic speed. And in the last line of defense, if any swarm of drones tries to saturate the perimeter, the Serum Phalanx system comes into action, a 20mm Gatling weapon guided by radar, which spits out thousands of projectiles per minute, creating an impenetrable wall of lead. When the average viewer watches this display of Western technological superiority, he tends to think that the game is won and that American victory is just a matter of days. But there's a detail that the international press has completely ignored, and it's ominously hidden at the bottom of the Strait of Hormuz. The fact is that Iran was not fighting a conventional war. It is following a playbook of economic desperation to drag the planet into the abyss. The practical result of the bombing of Kuwait's civilian airport was the beginning of an invisible cost escalation that directly affects your wallet. Tehran's strategy in targeting passenger facilities is to raise global financial risk to an unsustainable level. Can you understand that? Because on the same day, June 3rd, American naval forces were forced to stop and intercept a Botswana-flagged oil tanker that broke the rules of the international blockade and was heading toward Kark Island, Iran's main oil export hub. The American Navy fired a Hellfire missile directly at the ship's engine room to disable its propulsion at sea, strictly enforcing the exclusion zone. The immediate consequence of this stranglehold shot straight up. The major global airlines suspended routes over the Gulf. The oil markets experienced violent fluctuations, and Lloyd's of London's war risk premiums for any merchant ship attempting to cross the Strait of Hormuz skyrocketed straight up. There's no room for blind optimism here, my friends. Iran knows that its underground bases on Kesh Island are being pulverized. And that's exactly why they're willing to break global energy trade and flirt with nuclear collapse to force Washington to give in backroom negotiations. And all this tactical violence and targeting of missiles against civilian targets in Kuwait exposes the hypocrisy and strategic sarcasm that dictate the rules within the command of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The official statements from General Hossein Salami claim without hesitation that his forces are acting strictly to defend the dignity of the Iranian people. Yes, my friends. And the practical result of this supposed defense of dignity is internal confinement. The regime has just carried out the arbitrary arrest of 6,500 people within its own borders for protesting against the Ayatollahs. And it carried out the silent massacre of tens of thousands of civilians who tried to challenge the authority of the clerics in recent months. Iran is the former toxic partner of geopolitics that uses violence to try to camouflage a terminal structural weakness. And the regime is cornered by a 14-point negotiation framework proposed by Washington, which demands a total freeze on uranium enrichment for a period of 12 to 15 years in exchange for gradual sanctions relief. For a theocratic regime that bases its existence on the image of strength, signing such a document in broad daylight would mean the immediate outbreak of a domestic civil war and the fall of the Ayatollah's clan from power. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi tries to maintain a polished diplomatic facade before the West, trying to deceive everyone into thinking that this war is not theirs and that the United States is solely responsible for the consequences. The fact is that the naval blockade is bleeding the Revolutionary Guard's coffers by $500 million a day. The attack on the international airport was a desperate bargaining move. Iran is telling Washington that if the terms of the agreement do not guarantee the general's impunity and the financial survival of the regime, they will continue to crush the Gulf's civil infrastructure. And this machinery of chaos reverberates directly in NATO's intelligence rooms, opening a dangerous window of opportunity that Russia began to exploit in milliseconds. Realizing that the stockpiles of missiles, those American interceptors, and the radars of the THAAD system are fully focused on containing the crisis against Iran in the Middle East, the official envoy from Moscow issued a direct threat against the Baltic states, publicly stating that these nations' NATO membership will not shield them from Russian capabilities and that the Atlantic Alliance is on the verge of direct military confrontation. Vladimir Putin is playing his 4D chess, taking advantage of Washington's distraction in the Gulf to try to fracture European unity and gain decisive ground in Ukraine, proving that shrapnel fired in Hormuz directly affects the security of the European continent. The technological and economic confrontation established in the Gulf has laid all the cards on the table for good. And the era of superficial diplomacy was buried along with the wreckage of the passenger terminal over there in Kuwait. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard has burned its bridges and shown that it prefers to act as a force of international extortion rather than accept the rules of the global market. The layered defense system proved its absolute supremacy by neutralizing the ballistic missiles aimed at Bahrain. But the real vulnerability of the West does not lie in the mechanics of the interceptors, but in the financial cost of maintaining the global energy flow. Open while the Tehran regime bleeds $500 million a day and tries to break the economy of the Gulf partners. My friends, one thing is true. They managed to hit that airport. Where are the American interceptors? Where is the Iron Dome? Well, were they not working at the time of this attack against the civilian target? Now, in light of this raw data and this forensic dissection of the clash in the Gulf, the strategic verdict is final and you need to take a clear side right now. Far from any emotional cheering on the internet, I don't want shallow social media opinions. I want a technical judgment from someone who understands how high-intensity chess really works. On the other hand, if you think the United States is managing to overcome the Iranian attacks and suffocate the regime with the total paralysis of its economy, right shield. But if you see that the attack against civilian passengers in Kuwait is the trigger for an energy strangulation strategy that will drag the oil market and NATO into collapse, write chaos in the comments. Is Iran winning? Well, if you think so, write chaos. Leave your technical verdict down here, because I will personally analyze each answer to separate the elite analysts from the armchair guessers who remain blinded by the sugar-coated news on regular television. The connectivity breakdown on Kesha Island and the raw telemetry of the intercepted missiles that I showed you here represent only the visible layer of a much deeper international security fracture, my friends. We don't operate on guesswork, internet speculation, or late readings of regular newspapers. We operate at the absolute forefront of the hard facts before events even unfold. And that's why the invitation for you to join our intelligence bunker is not an advertisement. It's a tactical security call for those who want to decode the real playing field. Alongside more than 3,000 elite analysts who dissect sensor logs, satellite traffic and strategic flows. Long before the next crisis erupts across the map and turns into a spun headline on television. And the link for you to secure your seat at this exclusive table is pinned right below in the first comment and also in the description. Or use the QR code that's appearing on your screen. And if your main goal is to extend this security shield to the moral integrity of your home, protecting your family against the social engineering of woke culture without any whining, check out our series and movies channel. Besides not having to waste more time on Netflix and Amazon looking for something interesting to watch, we did that for you. On our channel, we recommend series and movies so you can just sit on the couch and enjoy the show. It's nice, it's cool. So for those who like series and movies, the link is in the description, in the first pinned comment, and in the card. So don't waste any more time. Go check out our series and movies channel and appreciate our curation. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video. Now, shield your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira and I'll see you next time. Until then.